their views. So Lydia, there is nothing else to say. I will hand over to you.
All righty, thank you. Let me share these slides. Give me a second. There we are there, but I'll have to, is that the right screen? There we go. And let's pop this into presentation mode. All right, everyone can see that?
Yes, we can.
All right, let's go. So today I'm talking about the CFP, and the reason I want to talk about this is because I get asked a lot of questions about what a good CFP should look like, peer review, and it's something I'm quite passionate about. And as I go through the talk, you'll see why. Let's just jump straight into it before I go into the who am I sorts of things. But what is it? What is a CFP? Those of us that are obviously at this conference know what it is. It's a call for paper, sometimes a call for presentation it's referred to, but basically it's you putting your ideas, your submission together for the fact that you're wanting to speak at a conference. And that's pretty much it. So it's just that submission process. Why submit? I'm really passionate about this because when I first started in InfoSec, I think I was, I don't know, late 20s. So before that, I was a software developer. And whenever you spoke about security, everybody kept everything tight. Nobody wanted to share. If you held on to that information, then your job was secure. And to me, it was a scary place to be because I felt that there was no confidence, no collaboration, and everyone held on to that security knowledge very tightly. Obviously, I'm a little bit older now, and I'm opposite of that. I want to be able to share my knowledge and my ideas, because that's going to make those people more confident and better driven to make those decisions. And likewise, if somebody knows something about a topic that I don't know, let's jump on it. Let's learn together. And this is why we have ComfyCon and all the other various community conferences and industry conferences that we have. So you're there to share your knowledge, perhaps share some cutting edge research that you've done, tell a story, share an experience, and it's all really important. All right, so the who am I? Ian is right. I hate doing this, so I'm going to keep it brief. I am Ping Tangent on Twitter, so feel free to add me or don't add me. I'm not really fussed. I don't tweet much these days, but if you want to connect, happy to go there. I just believe in working hard and being kind. I always tell my kids that the only superpower they need to have is to be kind, because everyone's different and you don't know what's going on in people's lives. Also, these days I'm referred to as cyber mum. I know it's because I'm not old. Ian tells me it's because of my wisdom. So I have Jo to thank for that if she's listening. Hey, Jo, and thank you for that. I suppose just a bit of background, as Ian said, I have 20 years of tech experience, 15 years security, started off as a coder, sysadmin, shell scripter, all that good stuff, and then literally just fell into security. These days, I basically play the role of security advisor, typically in the cloud space. But anything defensive, pretty much done it, because I've sat in the SOC for a couple of years. I've done vulnerability management, I've done malware analysis, and probably my pride and passion is doing POC of security software. So I love doing that. And I love mentoring. So it's something that I do a lot of, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. So why am I qualified to speak about call for the CFP? I am part of the Black Hat Review Board for Asia. I also am part of the DevSecCon Review Board, and I'm one of the founding members and one of the organisers of B-Sides Melbourne. Within the space of a year, sometimes I can read anywhere between, I don't know, between 500 to 1,000 papers, just depends on the submission process. So you can say that in the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of papers. So the goal of today is to give back. And if anyone is considering submitting to a conference, and we'll talk about the different types of conferences, I hope that this will encourage you to look at your submission process, scrutinize it a little bit, and be confident and ready. Okay. So the conference, which conference are you going to submit to? This obviously is a very personal decision. There is a lot of conferences. There's industry conferences, there's community conferences, there's academic conferences, there's a whole gamut of it. I've put a link to the AppSec conferences GitHub page. We have some awesome individuals within Australia and New Zealand that are contributing to this. Granted that this is really just showing the APAC areas. If you are interested in going internationally, obviously speak to these guys, speak to the conference itself. I know a lot of folks in the US and Canadian regions as well, having spoken there before, and I've got a lot of people in contact. So if you need a hand, let me know. But this should give you an exhaustive list. I haven't put the meetup link in here. There is a meetup one too, which I encourage you to look at, and we can pop it in the Discord later if someone can do it for me. Maybe Rami, I'm looking at you. If you could do that, that would be great. The only reason I haven't put the meetup link in here is because typically you don't need to do the meetup through the CFP process. So I really want to focus on that. But first time speakers, which is another presentation, I guess, altogether, is a different talk. I really just want to focus on the submission today. Okay. So depending on the conference, you're going to get different types of tracks. So what I've pulled out is I've pulled out Black Hat tracks. I've pulled out B-Sides Las Vegas, B-Sides Melbourne. Your local B-Sides are going to look different. But the reason I've presented these three, not because I review for these, but because there's some real good diversity here. And I want to be able to explain the difference. When you look at something like a Black Hat or a DEF CON, even B-Sides Las Vegas to some extent, it is very tracked focus. So if you look something like your local community B-Sides, at least in Australia, I don't care about the track initially that you're submitting to, because the number of submissions that we're going to get is going to be anywhere between 50 and 100. So it's easy for those 5 to 10 review board members to go through those submissions. But when you're talking about something like a DEF CON or a Black Hat, the USA conferences, they can get up to anywhere between 500 to 1,000 a year. And that is a lot of submissions when you look at the turnaround time being 2 months. I mean, you're dedicated looking at it night and day. And so when you're looking at something like Black Hat or a DEF CON, you want to be able to say, okay, my talk is malware focused or my talk is community focused, because you've got a dedicated group of reviewers to look at those tracks so that you know that the person reviewing your submission has a really particular area of expertise. And that's why some conferences make you select a track, because it helps the review board members quickly go ahead and go, yep, I can review that. Yep, I can review that, because you're aiming towards that person's or that reviewer's area of expertise. And that helps tremendously. When you talk about your local B-Sides, we look at B-Sides Las Vegas, for example, and I'm not going to go through all of them because you can go there and have a look yourself. Things like Breaking Ground, they're looking for new research. If you skip down to High Ground, you're talking about things like career-driven talks. Proving Ground, which is like the newbie type thing where you'll be buddied up with a mentor. Training is training, and Underground is talks that you don't want to be filmed. B-Sides Melbourne is probably not much different. We've got the general track for more experienced speakers. We've got rookie tracks, which are potentially first-time speakers, which we buddy up with a mentor, which I think is something that I'm seeing a lot of conferences do. Even for Black Hat USA, we're doing that now as well, which is really exciting, because sometimes we get new speakers at Black Hat USA. And none of us are naturally, we don't have the ability to naturally present. If any of us are, that's great. But I know myself, even preparing for this talk, honestly, I'm nervous as heck. And most of us are. So we're not natural born speakers. So if you want, we've got great conferences like B-Sides Las Vegas, Black Hat, and some of your local B-Sides that are budding you up with a mentor. And I think that's really good, because you can piggyback off those levels of experience. So that's why you see some of these different variations. So hopefully that's myth busted that a little bit. All right, quick drink, and let's talk about the layout.
What's in the drink, Lydia? Is it vodka or gin?
It's actually water.
Oh.
Let me lie. No, it's a Sauvignon Blanc.
Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, I shall go back to my corner.
I do have some in the fridge. I could get it out. So with the CFP layout, I put in asterisks down there it's conference dependent. So for example, besides Melbourne, ComfyCon, some of your local community cons, you're going to have things like your name, you know, your bio, your handle, that stuff's all, you know, all there by default. But things like your abstract's always there. Depending on the conference and the number of submissions, I won't say competition because it's actually not a competition. It just depends on what's been put forth. But sometimes a conference will ask you for a presentation outline. So I know in the past, besides Melbourne have asked for it because we got a massive amount of submissions. And if you've got two talks that are really similar, how do you then go to the next step? So that's that presentation outline to sort of give more deep analysis of what the talk will detail. Some conferences will ask for new research, concepts, techniques, what that new research is, and they're going to be the bigger conferences that are going to expect new research, such as a Black Hat or a DEF CON, and even besides Las Vegas, Breaking Ground, sorry. Has it been presented before? I'm not going to cover that a lot, so I'll cover it here. Is it important? For B-sides, at least from our perspective, is it important? Yes, no. If it's been presented 20 times and it's on video and it's on YouTube and you know that all of the InfoSec community has seen it, you've got to make a decision. Is it worthwhile having that face-to-face or doing it again? Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. So if you say yes or no, it's not a bad thing, but please be honest, because the review board members are pretty switched on and they will find out if it has or hasn't been. This is probably more relevant for the DEF CONs and the Black Hat style talks, because where you're paying or where you've got a big audience and you've got lots of really, really switched on people in the room, they're expecting new research. They're expecting something that hasn't been presented before. So it's very important, obviously, to be honest and say, have you presented it or not before? And if it has been presented before and you still want to submit to a Black Hat or a DEF CON, for example, it's okay. It's just important that you're clearly able to articulate what is different between the first time you presented and what is the new research being presented in this submission. And that's all. So have a think about that. If you're not sure, you can always ask one of the review board members or the conference member, or ask me or ask ComfyCon folks or your B-sides community folks. We're always happy to give you advice. And for takeaways, this is something I'll talk about in great depth, but basically this is your mic drop. What are you leaving? What are you leaving the people that are going to come to your talk with? Are you leaving them with an idea? Are you leaving them with a tool? Are you leaving them with something that they can go, right, this is something I can action straight away? So that's really, the takeaways are really important as well. Oh, wrong screen. Sorry, got too many screens here. So I'm going to probably spend the next 10 minutes on the abstract, because again, this is something where I see a lot of opportunity for people to take it to that next level. And the reason why the abstract is so important is because this is what gets published. This is what you will see on the website, in the brochure, wherever. This is you. This has got your brand to it. It's what gets bums on seats. It's what is going to spark people's curiosity. It's you need to look at your abstract and say, reading this, if I was to read this on a website, am I going to go and watch this? If this is an area of interest for me, have I phrased this in a way that I know this is relevant for me, so I absolutely cannot miss this talk? If you're going to like a major conference where there's multiple streams, and there's 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 different tracks, and you haven't articulated it properly, they're going to go to a different talk. So you need to make sure that you hit those points so that you're going to get the right audience or the audience to come to your talk. And it's all in the abstract. So this is why I want to focus on this. This is your draw card. So when I've been asked to peer review people's abstracts before in the past, or even when I've submitted to conferences before. I remember my very first conference, I think I researched for a good 5 to 6 hours on talks. I read abstracts, I broke them down, and these are the 3 things that I found. And for me, when I'm reading abstracts, I look for these 3 things. I look for the problem statement, the problem that you're faced, because this is really important, because when you're reading the abstract, someone will go, oh yeah, that kind of relates to me. I get that. That's a problem that we're facing today. And then the next thing you're going to say is, so based on this problem, this is what I'm going to talk about. And then like that, now you're setting the story, you're setting the scene so that people know what you're going to talk about. And you don't have to give away everything. You just hit some of the key points and then come back to the takeaway, which I'll talk about later. What are you going to be giving them? You're going to give them advice. You're going to drop them a tool. What are you going to do? Because then they know that, yeah, you're going to be talking about X, Y, and Z, which they're interested in, but what are you going to leave them with so that they know that they're going to go to your talk and they're going to walk away with something useful? And so I always, when I've seen abstracts written, when they're hitting those 3 key points, it normally forms between 2 and 4 paragraphs. If sometimes I've seen good abstracts that are 1 paragraph. There's no rule, again, depending on the conference. Something like a B-Sides community conference, and I'm including ComfyCon in that because we're a community conference. You know, I'm not expecting war and peace. If it's 1 paragraph and it can at least tell me what it's about and what the key takeaways are, that's enough. But normally you'll be able to accomplish, hit these topics in about in 2 to 3 paragraphs. Let's have a look here. I think, do I have another? Oh, sorry, wrong one again. Give me a second. I've got 2 keyboards here. Okay. So what I want to do now is I've got 4 abstracts that I just want to quickly go through, and I'm hitting abstracts a bit hard. It's simply because I've read a lot, and I know that it's a very big deal because, again, this is what gets published and this is what's going to get people to your talk. So I've picked 2 from ComfyCon that I liked. Doesn't mean I don't like any of the others, so please don't interpret it that way. Just 2, maybe 2 that stood out for me. And I've taken 2 that recently I saw at Black Hat that I liked as well. And it just gives you a different flavor for different conferences. It doesn't mean one is better than the other, but they're hitting the points. So sorry, Rami, if you're listening, I picked your one to start with. So I've highlighted in blue. Rami's going to talk tomorrow about getting that job in cybersecurity. So Rami's fairly new to the industry. He's just left university. And you can see here in his problem statement, he's saying, so you've studied at university, maybe you're transitioning from another discipline, blah, blah, blah. You've asked for advice countless amount of times, but been told the same thing. And so when you talk about from a problem statement perspective, you're reading that going, hey, yeah, I've been in that situation too. So automatically, Rami's hit the problem statement and you're going to relate to that. And so he's now got you. He's got you at that problem statement. The next thing he's going to say, so if you come to my talk, I'm going to talk to you about the following things. All right, he's going to go beyond the jargon. He's going to talk about mindset. He's going to talk about all these things. So you're reading that. He's got you at the first statement. Now, if you go in the middle, you're looking at that going, okay, they're challenges that I'm facing. That's going to really help me. But what's he going to leave you with? What's the drop? So here, he's going to share with you some of his thoughts and some of the things that's helped him tackle the world, and hopefully give advice to the participants watching tomorrow on how they can make their own way. How can they make their way forward in cybersecurity? So he's leaving them with something. And anyone that's sitting Rami's talk tomorrow, no pressure, Rami, but he's going to leave them with some valuable information that they can take away to make their own path in cybersecurity. Now, I want to talk about another one, and it was actually Atticus. So apologies, Atticus, but I thought this was a really good one as well. So if we look at Atticus's talk as well, you talk about what do we do in the shadows. So here, you know, she talks about, I'll just jump to the second paragraph, but every organization infrastructure has shadow, unofficial system, servers. So I'm reading that going, hey, yeah, I've got that, you know, that guy that sits next to me, and he's got that production database sitting under his desk and nobody knows about it. There's no BCP plan. If it all goes pear-shaped, we're in big trouble, and it's processing transactions. Everyone's got it. So she's put it out there, and you've automatically related to it because there's somebody in the office that's doing that same thing. And then you go down to the next stage of her abstract, and she's talking about what she's going to talk about. She's going to talk to you about stories. She's going to devolve the psychology that leads to the development of shadow IT, blah, blah, blah. So there you can go, yep, I can relate to that. And that's potentially going to help me. All right. And what is she going to leave you with? Okay. She's going to leave developers and security professionals with the tools they need to build the systems that they actually, that they need. And hopefully that's not shadow IT. So you're going to go to her talk and you know that she's going to leave you with some useful information that's going to be able to help you tackle this information when you go to work on Monday, because today's Saturday, as an example. Now, let's talk about two that I've seen at Black Hat. Now, these go the next layer up. Now, those abstracts are great for our community conferences. They are fantastic. They're stories, they're useful, and we need them. Now, when you talk about conferences like a DEF CON or a Black Hat, you're now talking about cutting edge research. Now, this is one of the abstracts that always stood out in my mind. I think this was presented at Asia in 2019, and this was about vulnerabilities in the TPM. Now, these were two researchers in Korea, and if we go to the yellow section at the top there, they give the summary about what TPM is, and we all know, so I'm not going to go into that. And then if I'm pointing and no one can see that, if you look at the last sentence in that second paragraph, because TPMs is the critical point in the trusted platform, many researchers had tried to find vulnerabilities in the TPM. So if you're reading this abstract and you have got an interest in TPMs, you could think, well, I'd love to see if the TPMs can be exploited. I'd love to see if we can do side channel attacks on these TPMs. You're reading that and they're grabbing you with the problem statement. And then when you go into the middle section, they talk about, in this talk, we're going to talk about two vulnerabilities. So these two researchers have found vulnerabilities in the TPM. They've been published, and they're going to go through step by step on how they were able to compromise the TPM platform. So again, if you've got an interest in this, you're going to look at it and go, I really want to see what they did. This is really cool. Now you talk about the takeaway. So you look at the blue section and they've said, to mitigate these vulnerabilities, we'll also present the countermeasures and a new tool called Napa. So Napa basically goes to sleep, and when the system boots up, it will basically check to see if those two vulnerabilities exist. So from a research perspective, you're looking at that going, here's two researchers that have found a vulnerability. Not only are they talking about the vulnerability, but they're going to show you how to mitigate it because they're about to drop a tool. And they're the key takeaways. And I love it because it's so well articulated. And again, we'll talk about the presentation outline, because remember, this is the thing that just gets published. And the last one, I don't want to, again, focus too much because I'm really, I'm focusing on abstracts a lot, but it's only because it's what gets published. And for the amount of conferences that we're presenting to in Asia Pac, the abstract is really important. This particular talk was presented this year. This was called Evil of the Spy Camera. I've just taken the heading away because otherwise it just looks too small. And then these two researchers from South Korea, they're talking about spy cameras. They're talking about how there's a movement coming. There's a movement with some of the women, or a lot of women in South Korea. My life is not porn, because they're hiding cameras in hotels and situations where, as a woman or as anybody in the community, you don't want to be exposed. You don't want to be vulnerable for that. And you know, they say for only $30 you can pick them up on Amazon, and they're hard to detect. So when you read that, you go, again, this is a problem. This is a problem. So what are they going to talk about? And so what these researchers have done is they've brought 30 plus different types of spy cameras. They've pulled them apart. They've figured out how they worked because they're undetectable. And so what you're going to see as they talk, you're going to see all the areas of research that they did in relation to these spy cameras that they went and did research on. What's their takeaway? So again, if you look at the blue section here, what these researchers did is they actually then offered up advice on, or I think it was a tool actually, if memory serves me, but they gave away an open source tool on then how to detect these spy cameras. So again, that's the takeaway. The takeaway is not always a tool. It could be something else. It could be, I know before when I've spoken in the past, the tools that I gave up, it wasn't an automated tool, but it was like a framework that somebody could use for testing, or it might be an idea about compliance or something like that, that's going to create a conversation or facilitate a conversation. But I guess what I like about going through these 4 different types of abstracts is you can see that they're actually all the same, but they're targeted for the specific types of conferences. So that's why I always say it's really, really, really important to know your conference. Always look at past papers that have been accepted. Speak to the speakers, see what they felt like. Have a look at what the conference vibe is. If the conference vibe is pretty casual and fun, or is the conference vibe, very serious? We only want serious research, or is it a mix? And then from that, you're able to formulate what your abstract would look like. But your abstract is still going to have these 3 key points, in my opinion, anyway. I mean, some of you might feel differently, but that's how I've always seen it well articulated anyway. So let's move to the next section. Okay. So the presentation outline, again, these are additional fields that I've seen in some CFP submissions, and not all of them have it, but I just want to talk about it in case it pops up. So the presentation outline is something that is not published. It is for the review board members. So where you are submitting research about a particular vulnerability or a tool or even a story, it is your opportunity here to speak to the review board members to speak about why you are an expert in this field. I've seen some presentations presentation outline that will say introduction, 5 minutes, topic 1, 10 minutes. And some people go down to that layer. Most of us haven't written our presentation at that stage. Some of us have. Some people will actually, they'll go into very, very, very specific details about the work that they did and be able to provide a backing about why they're an expert to talk about this. So if I use, for example, if we use Atticus or Rami's case as an example, Rami's just fresh out of university, he's taken a long time to do that. So you can see that based on his character, and he's got where he needs to go, potentially he can provide advice to that. So you might be able to put that in here. Same with Atticus, she's been in the industry for so long. She's seen the impact of these systems. So she's got that that backing for her level of expertise. If you want to storytell, for example, my first year as a pen tester or my first year as a SOC analyst, for one of our community conferences here, you could, again, you put your background and say, you put the detail in there to give credibility to your talk, not just an abstract that's going to get published, but now this is your opportunity to sell the idea, to show that you've got the credentials on your back. And don't be scared to do it. You're not boasting. We don't know you. Most review board members, and I know I do it, I don't look at the name of the person who's submitting. I don't care. I care about the work. I care about the research. That's what's important. That's what's going to impact the people that are coming to the conference. So you're not boasting. You're basically backing yourself to show why you've got the credentials to speak to that. And that's perfectly okay. I mean, I'm one to talk. I play everything down. But seriously, you really need to, because look, we don't know who you are. We don't know your background. So let us know. It's really important. Just checking if there's anything else I missed here. But yeah, as I said here, here's an opportunity to back up your work. And a lot of the times in this presentation section, it's pretty free flowing. It won't be 400 or 500 words or characters or whatever. So hopefully, there's plenty of room for you to write what you need. All right, let's move to the next one. So again, this is really more prudent potentially to the black hats and the DEF CONs. I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but again, this is your opportunity to explain your research. Why is it new? Why has it not been done before? So if you've written, for example, a tool to scan GitHub repos for certain bits of code and you want to release it, You can say that your research is new because you found this problem and you had to do it manually, and you've written something to automate it, and you've not seen anything like it before. Go into as much detail as you can. If you've written a PhD thesis or a master's by research or whatever, and you want to attach your white paper, or you want to reference your CVEs, or if you want to reference your work, you can do that here. And most conferences will not release those details, especially I know, like for the DEF CONs and the Black Hats and those sorts of things, they want those big bang type talks. So they're not going to disclose that information. And again, they're the sorts of conferences that I'm talking about. For B-Sides Melbourne, I'm not going to ask this sort of thing. If people include it, great, but the feel of it is a little bit different. But if you want to, something to think about. Why is it new? And many of the review board members will know whether it's new or not, especially because it's very track and SME focused. All right. This is something that I could talk to forever. Takeaways. What are you leaving them with? What is the Monday rule? And I can't take credit for that, so I'll talk about or reference the Monday rule in a minute. But so you've done your talk. I'm sitting in the audience and I'm listening to your talk. You've told me all this great stuff about your experience and what you've done. Now you need to focus on what are the things that you're going to leave that person in the audience with. What am I walking away with? Am I walking away with your research so that I can take that back to the office and go, oh, this person spoke about all these endpoint product tools, and I know that this one's terrible and this one's great, and now that's going to help me with my POC. Or whatever, someone's released their GitHub repo, so it's all open source, so then I can go back at work and do whatever. Or someone's told me a story, and that really resonated with me. So now I've got the confidence to move forward and not be so shy. It's okay to go, oh my God, I'm absolutely not the smartest person in the room. But everybody feels like that. Everyone worries that they don't know enough. Even I feel like I don't know enough. But that's okay, because we're all learning and we've all got to evolve. So think about when you're putting your talk together, what are you going to leave them with? And you may think that you don't. And I've spoken to a lot of people that I don't. But when we sit down and we analyze their talk, by the time we get to this point, these stacks, it's just sometimes people need to be mentored and get it pulled out of them. So just quickly, I want to drop the Monday rule. For those that know Daniel Cuthbert, he's a friend and a mentor. Find him on Twitter. He's an absolute rock star. That man will give up his time for anybody. Now, when I was preparing for a conference talk a few years ago, he was reading my paper, or he read something, and he just said to me, "What's your Monday rule? I don't get it." And I said to him, "What's a Monday rule?" And he said, "If I'm sitting at your talk on a Friday, what's the thing that you're going to leave me with so that on Monday I can go and action that?" So it still rolls into the takeaways. It still rolls into those sound bites. Just another way. So if you hear someone call it a Monday rule, think about it. Someone sitting on your talk today, what are you going to leave them with? What are the things that they can take away in action? And that's really, really, really important. I always ask that, and I always look for that Monday rule. What are you educating them with? What's your stamp? What's your legacy for the talk that you're about to give? All right. So really quickly, hopefully, Ian, if I'm going over time, just let me know. I want to just go through the process quickly, because I know I get asked this a lot. Review board processes differ. I know Black Hat to DevSecCon to B-Sides Melbourne, and one I'm about to join another one very soon, Diana. That's really different. They're all very, very different. Most of the review boards that I sit on, some of them are blind, where you don't actually see the name of the submission person. Some of them aren't blind, but most review board members that I know will always review a paper based on the information, not based on the person. Otherwise, you're never going to get new blood coming in, and you can't always assume that you can't have the same people over and over again. So the review board is typically made of, depending on the conference, let's just say, for example, B-Sides Melbourne, I think there's anywhere between 5 to 10 of us. Everyone looks at all the papers individually and everyone scores them individually. Our scoring is very, very, very simple. And then we discuss it in a very constructive way. Black Hat is no different. DevSecCon is no different, but it's a collaboration. No one's picking their friends. And if they are, then you need to ask yourself, is that the right conference for you? So that's really important. Something else that I like to talk about, accept versus decline, not reject. I hate the word reject. If I call that B-Sides Melbourne, because that's the one that's fresh in my mind, this year, for example, even though we had to call it off 24 hours before, we had an abundance of DFIR talks. We had so many tracks, we had so many submissions that we could have created a track just for DFIR. And Shannon, I know you'd be happy to hear that, but we couldn't. And so when you've got that, many types of submissions, you've got to, as a committee, you've got to figure out, well, do we keep it DFIR heavy, or do we balance it with different talks, different topics, different tracks? Because you've got people from different walks of life. So I think it's really important as a review board member and as a conference organizer to be really transparent with the feedback and say, this is a great talk, but we just don't have the space. And when we say we don't have the space, it's literally because the space is not there. It's not because the talk is rejected. I absolutely hate that word, rejected. Even like the B-Sides Las Vegas, they'll say this is not the rejected talks. Sometimes it's just a matter of capacity. And I mean, I've had to look at talks that weren't accepted simply just because of capacity, and it's heartbreaking. And when those situations happen, I think it's really important to portray that information, because people can take it personally, and it's definitely not. I suppose just before I move to my concluding slide, don't feel like you can't talk to your review board members. We're all people, we're all human, everyone's approachable. And if they aren't, again, you need to think about that. Everyone started off with no knowledge. Everyone started off on the same foot. I'm not this great person. I am who I am, and I want everyone to feel comfortable that they can approach me or any of the other B-Sides Melbourne team or anyone from whoever. They should be approachable, because the speakers are making that conference what it is, not the review board members, not the conference organizers, even though they put in a massive amount of time. It's the speakers that make it. So we have a due diligence or a responsibility to make sure that our people that submitted are really taken care of. And I take that with a lot of pride and responsibility. So providing constructive feedback, not to say, oh, this talk's been done before. That's not constructive feedback. So you've got to really provide constructive feedback so that they can do something actionable the next time. So that's really important. All right, so I think I'm finally concluding. So that's positive. So what's next? So when you're looking at putting a talk together, brainstorm it, have a look at it. It might be, if it's not cutting edge research, that's okay. It might just be a story. It might be about your career path. It might be about your first 2 years as a SOC analyst, or looking at a patch management process that was never going to improve. Whatever it is, brainstorm something in your area expertise. I had a really interesting discussion with somebody that I really respect the other day, and she said, I've got nothing technical to talk about. And I wanted to I wanted to be a little bit negative, but I said to her, let's talk about your experience. And as we started to talk about things, she goes, oh man, I actually do have something to talk about. So don't think that technical is the way to go. I hate the usage of the word technical and non-technical. It's your experience. Everyone's got different levels of ability. So don't think you've got nothing to share. Everyone's got something to share. Oops, wrong keyboard again. Know your audience. So there's no point putting a conference together about something that's already spoken about. So if you're going to do malware 101, if you're going to submit that to a black hat, it's not going to get accepted. But maybe at a B-Sides, it would get accepted because it's something that people are interested in. So really, really research your conference and know what your target audience is. Again, you can do that by looking at previous talks, speaking to speakers, speaking to the conference organizers and say, what do you think of this? Hopefully they'll be transparent enough to be honest and give you the feedback that you're seeking. Again, speak to previous speakers, speak to the conference organizers, speak to the review board. They should be open and available for you. Look at the past talks that have been accepted. And again, research the CFP outline, have a look what it looks like, look at videos like this, or look at blogs that have been written. They're there to help. Just don't write it and submit it. Get it peer reviewed, get friends to look at it, get review board members to look, get people that have been in the industry to look at it. I mean, that goes to say for anything really. You always want to get it peer reviewed. And I think that's it, actually. Yep, that's it. So thank you. I hope everyone got something out of it. I am absolutely approachable. If anyone wants to talk to me on Discord or Twitter, feel free. Otherwise, you can just annoy Ian and Shanna. That's fine too.